Okay, good evening. Today is May 1st, the May meeting of the Forest Lake Airport Commission. Mr. Schmidt, would you please take roll?
Mr. Dahlbeck.
Present.
Mr. Husnick.
Here.
Mr. Monson.
Here.
John Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Present.
All are present.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Well, I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion from Mr. Husnick. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Munson seconds. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is everyone. It's unanimous. We will move on to the report from Bolton and Mink, and Silas is not here this evening, so Dan, is there anything new?
I'll do the stand-in for Silas. I talked to him yesterday for about a half hour and kind of went over the update here. So we have a few just kind of updates from the last meeting. If you recall, we were still waiting for MnDOT to release their green list of projects that they have approved for the financial year 2020. We had hoped to have that list in advance of this meeting, but in the interim between last month's meeting and this month's meeting, we found out that MnDOT Aeronautics is not going to release the final list until the legislative session wraps up, which is on May 20th. So once the session wraps up, budgets are approved, that's when they're going to release their the list of projects that are approved. It's still looking like we have the go-ahead on the seal coat and crackfill project for the runway. We just don't have the guarantee at this point. So in kind of talking to Silas in terms of staging, once that list is released, for the June meeting, we'll kind of bring back the known list of projects that are approved. Also look at the project or the next steps on that, assuming that crack seal and filling is on the list, as we anticipate it will be. We'll then kind of bring forward the next steps in that, which include the plans and specs for the project. Given the price of the project, we're going to have to take it out and do a competitive bid for it. So we'll kind of go through that sequencing. Silas is confident that we'll be able to get this done in this year, by October of this year, so we're still well on track for all of that. Kind of along the lines of the projects as well, we're also still may have a request in with MnDOT to do a CIP funding meeting, just to kind of see where the other two projects that we presented landed, and if there's any way that we can break those apart, or any other way we can present those projects to kind of get them to rank higher in the funding strategy. So that includes the other two projects where the master plan update and the expansion of the additional lots and the infrastructure for those. So we still have a request in to have that meeting to kind of say, is there anything that we can do? Can we break them apart? How can we format these to increase our chances of getting them funded? Still waiting to hear back on that. And like I said, in June, that's when you're going to see a lot of the information come forward, kind of the knowing plan of as to what we'll be doing for the grant projects for fiscal year 20. Any questions on kind of where we are with that? There's not much of an update there, but we're kind of again beholden to MnDOT's schedule at this point.
It'd be nice if we can get that meeting before May 20th.
Right. Yeah, and I know Silas is working on them. We have requests in with them, and I know they're kind of I think at this point they're in kind of the throes of their budget cycle as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions for Dan?
No, I was just wondering if, this is a little bit separate, but Dan and I were down at MnDOT. It was kind of an invitational thing to talk about needs and meets and that kind of thing, and it was supposed to be several people there, and it turned out to be a panel of 5 because it was a really lousy day and the other folks that were invited couldn't fly in there that day. And what it was a listening session basically on MnDOT's part. And there were some questions there, how we can better facilitate the funding and communication and that kind of thing. And I was just going to ask Dan if he wanted to expand on it. He and I sat on it. In fact, Forest Lake was pretty well represented because Silas was there, I was there, and Dan was there, and there was only 2 other fellows there. So it was. We kind of had the floor.
Yeah, we did definitely have the floor, and I think a lot of that meeting, as Sam mentioned, was they're trying to when they do their needs assessment meetings at the airport, they're trying to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the local airports and getting those meetings set up in a format that actually is beneficial. Because I think they've kind of realized that the airports all have different levels of needs, different levels of service, different levels of support, and they're trying to make sure that when they come in to do these needs assessments, that they're actually meeting the needs of the local airports that are there. So they're kind of looking at how can they kind of reformat their meetings, how can they kind of make sure that the information they provide to when they come to these meetings is what the attendees need, who's the right people to attend these meetings. So I mean, it was very beneficial to kind of offer input in terms of, you know, what staff needs, what local decision makers need, you know, and hopefully as a result of that, when they come forward with the next needs assessment, what I think is coming up not too in the far distant future, that meeting will be more productive and the end result will be a better product.
Yeah, it's just to make everything more efficient, and that's all it was. There was no decisions really made. They were just looking at what everybody's opinion was, and they asked they did ask some questions that everybody had to answer to. So it was kind of fun and interesting. So, but your explanation was very good, Dan.
Yes, yeah, no problem, no problem.
That's why he asked. Any other questions or comments for Dan on that?
Dan, I asked you before the meeting, just for the public record, there's no idea for a timeline on how long a crack sealing project would take, how long the runway would be closed, nothing like that. Silas can address that later.
Correct, and my assumption would be that we would put that into the plans and specs for it, that we'd have a very clear, you know, here's your timeline window, here's the notification that we need, how long does runway need to be closed for, so we can get that published well in advance of the closure. Again, that's my assumption. Silas can speak to that with a lot more authority than I can, but that's just kind of my assumption as to what would happen as we go forward with this project.
All right, those are the set items on our agenda.
There's a couple more on the Bolton Mix side too, so.
Okay.
Just the capital improvement program, it's still there's no major update to that, it's still attached in the report that Silas created. One thing that has come up is item number 3, which is the airport crop restriction layout, which is basically a fancy way of saying the area that we mow at the airport. As we're inching closer and closer to the mowing season here, although it doesn't feel like it today with it being cold and drizzly out there, Dave Adams had contacted me. I know there was a little bit of conversation last year in terms of what areas do we need to be mowing at the airport and what areas do we want to be mowing this year. He kind of reached out and just said, hey, let's make sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of what we need to mow versus what we are mowing. This also kind of backs up to the ag lease rent as well. There's when they came in early on, they mentioned, they said, hey, if you guys don't need to mow everything out there, we're willing to hay that area out, so it won't just go completely wild. They would still cut it probably 2 or 3 times a season, depending upon the growing season. I'll pull this up on screen here. So on page, I believe it's on page, it's right after the CIP in the packet that you have. There's a map with a yellow line around the airport.
Yep.
The runway. So what that is, and I'll pull it up on your screens here in front of you as well so everybody can see it.
It's a crop restriction area that.
Correct. So this is, in essence, this is the minimum. So if this, you can't plant anything within this area. So the area that we need to maintain, that we need to mow, this is the minimum size, like based on the regulations that we have. When I asked Silas, why isn't this? Oh, there we go. So when I asked Silas, what is the minimum requirement? So this would be anything that's from the yellow line into the runway, and I apologize, it's a little tough to see. I'll try to zoom in here a little bit more. Try to get it centered there. So anything that's from the yellow line into the runway, that's required to be basically higher maintained. It can't be planted like cropland or anything like that. Outside of that, you're able to, you know, let that grow longer, let that be used for hay, cropland, or another use. So that's the minimum that's required per regulation. So then I asked Dave, I said, you know, give me an outline of what we're currently mowing out there, which, oh, that's the minimum. Pull up that one. He drew this, oh, it's the same map. 1 second here. I had both of them up before the meeting. So we're actually currently mowing a little bit more than that, actually quite a bit more than that. So what you see here, this is what we're currently mowing. So we're doing a lot more on the north end up here than that's what required for the minimum, and a lot more here on the south end. I know this south end here specifically, when I met with Taylors, who are the ones that have the ag lease, they said, if you guys don't mow that, we'll take care of that, we'll put it into hay. I guess I'm just looking for, feedback, so everybody kind of expectations as to what the maintenance is gonna look like out there lines up. Staff prefers to do more towards the minimum. It would save, there's quite a bit of staff time saving there. If we don't need to be mowing everything in the north end and we're able just to hay it out,
Sure.
that's kind of the recommended approach. But just wanted your feedback on that before we kind of put that into practice.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment about that, because it's kind of interesting. I was talking to somebody from one of the airports here in Minnesota. I don't know, can't remember exactly what the conversation was, but except that we started talking about geese, and I think it was at Cambridge, from Cambridge. Don't quote me on that, but the comment was that they do less mowing now and fewer geese. Because the geese want to go in there and have that nice green,
right.
freshly mowed grass.
Yep.
And, I realize that we certainly want to mow along the runway and we want to do all that, but it sure seems to me that we could do some, cut back on that. And that would certainly save us some money in the long run. But that was kind of an interesting comment the guy had, and he said that it worked out pretty well, where they had fewer problems with the geese. So, and, we relocated like 32 geese, I think, last year. And when they like that nice green grass, boy, they're there.
Inside this yellow bound where we're required to mow, is there a length that they determine? Is someone says it can't be longer? I mean, can we just let that grow a little longer too? I know Lake Elmo, I believe they hay even the infield, right close to the runway. I'm pretty sure they.
Yeah, I'd have to confirm with Silas. We didn't get to the level of detail in terms of what the actual height needs to be, and I asked him just kind of mowing standards, and he kind of said that restricted area in there, I don't know what the minimum is for in there. But if you look at it, we are definitely doing a lot more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Which,
Yeah, we should not be doing more than we need to, but I would even let it, especially with the geese issue, if going a little longer with the grass will reduce the wildlife.
What I'll probably do, if it's okay with the commission, I'll just reach out to Dave Adams. I know there may be something if the grass gets too long and it'd be tougher for the equipment to get through there. I'll just kind of defer to him and just kind of say, if on the commission's okay with kind of doing more along the lines of what's the minimum, the yellow map, we'll start out with that and just kind of say, here's what we're going to be doing in 19. I just wanted the commission to be aware before all of a sudden there's kind of a drastic change out there, and all of a sudden it's.
But to Don's question, I mean, they could even hay it along the runway, providing the FAA says, well, we can let it grow, say this height, whatever,
Yeah.
And that, so, yeah, I think that we're onto something here, I really do, and this is great information, really.
Any idea of the savings, or how many hours they put in, or how many hours, would be saved?
Dave has that information.
Yeah, I asked him, this is back of the napkin scratch map at this
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
So, I asked him, I said, if you went from the map that's on your screen now to the map that Silas presented, I said, just ballpark what it would be. He figured about a half a day per mow, which is significant time savings if you
That's
look at
something,
over
yeah.
the course of the whole summer, how
Yeah.
much time is dedicated out there. So that number could fluctuate. I don't hold him to that. That was just kind of his first.
I just want to support Sam's idea, and I think Don's idea. Let's let it grow along the runway, and we'll mow that too.
There's one thing, we've got to make sure that we got enough room for Schultz, big aerial signs.
Yeah.
He
Oh, yeah.
has to have enough area to land without ripping all his equipment up.
Oh, I understand that. but,
So that, and the other thing too, a question I've got is when we did the airport project, that big pile of dirt disappeared. Well, that whole area now is being cropped by Taylors. Are we getting credited for that?
I'm working with him, so I met with the Taylors in the beginning of this year and asked them to provide updated acreage for 19 and 20, because historically in the past, they didn't know how wet the land was going to be, because the drainage changed out there at the airport project, areas that they could farm. So I said, give me the projections of where you're going to be at 19. I'll circle back with them to make sure I get all of those figures. But we did have a meeting, and I just said, I need your acreage total, what you guys are going to be doing, so making sure that we're charging the right amount for the right amount of acreage that's being currently farmed out there. So we will have an updated figure for for 19 and 20, because I believe the lease that we have with them actually is up. It's either the end of this year or 20, so we're close to having to do a renewal on the ag lease as well. And just for commission's awareness, ag lease prices, from what I've been told, have actually decreased since the last time around, just because of the current situation with, ag commodity products, with the market being lower right now. The last time we renegotiated that, it was kind of at a high point, so we were able to kind of command a premium price for the ag lease. They kind of came in and said, look, pricing overall has decreased, just so you're aware, and I said, no, I'm fine with that. So they're gonna kind of give us, they have from, I believe it's the Farm Bureau, or some farm-related entity that kind of tracks what ag lease is currently going for. They're gonna provide a summary of what other comparable lease prices are to make sure that we're in the market for that. But just so be aware that the price per acre could decrease at the next renewal. But we'll see what the market does between now and the renewal period as well.
Dan, could you, I'm sorry, could you pull that picture back up again? Because that brings up one other subject that I wanted to bring up during the open forum, or what do you want to call it? Up on this field right here where the windsock is, guys, this would be down with your arrow, right in there, Dan. It goes up to that fence, and then the windsock is about there. We have not been able to access that field since the runway was done. And so what I'd like to see, because of the taxiway is right there isn't room now to run equipment through there. I'd like to see about a 40-foot swath cut through those trees there, so that the farmers would have access to that field. I don't know how many acres that is, but.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know there's a number of acres.
Yeah, but they always used to raise corn or hay or something in there. And there's
So
a couple.
that's property that we're not taking advantage of right now.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and what happened is we kind of lost it when they ran the taxiway. There's a big ditch there, and I can't even get my pickup through there right now. I tried it. So the problem is with equipment, sometimes they need a big, pretty big swath,
Right.
Now, there's a couple opportunities to have people just go in there and cut some firewood. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but I did want to bring it up for discussion and take a look at that.
We have a volunteer that would be willing to go in with a chainsaw and cut some down.
We do have a couple of them, actually. There's always caveats
That's
involved
the
with that,
issue,
but,
insurance and liability.
we did that before, but I just wanted to make sure that the airport commission was aware of it, and
Can you point to me again, just on your screen, so I can see where the swath needs to be cut?
it'd be just right where that red line is there, just right between the taxiway.
Corner of the runway.
That'd be the,
Northeast corner of the runway, and
of
it
the
would,
runway, right, or the
and it would be
northwest.
the grove of trees by Hangar Echo.
Yep,
Yeah, so when you put the taxiway in.
so it would be the very west
Because there's a
end of
ditch on the
that
side
row
of
of
the
trees.
taxiway.
Right.
Yep.
Can't get across it no more.
So, we should, it might even be too late for this year. I don't know if we can access it or not, but
I think we're still in the window. I'd have to confirm with Taylor's what.
tell you what, could you arrange something where I could maybe meet with the Taylors out there and see what they need, and then we could figure out how to do that?
And they mentioned that as well during the meeting. They asked, and I said, from the city's perspective, if it's just a 40-foot access through
Right.
there, it didn't seem like it was an insurmountable mountain to figure out how to
Okay.
get that done.
Would it be possible to put a culvert alongside the taxiway and just drive down the taxiway or not? I mean, they're only
I don't
gonna
know.
access
I don't know. I
once
think
or
that
twice a year,
I think that would depend on MnDOT, to be honest with you.
Is their equipment too heavy?
No, it isn't that. It's a lot of times just too wide.
I see.
It was just, what happened, right by the taxiway, if you go down there, there's a real deep, steep
Right.
ditch there. It's not big, but
Yeah.
it's,
That's why I say, if you put a culvert in and filled it over, they could access it that way.
yeah. I was just looking for the cheaper way out, to get them in there.
Cheaper way to be cut the trees.
Right, yeah, I think it would be, yeah. And of course, we'd have to have permission from MnDOT or somebody to put a culvert in there, where we wouldn't have to, with the trees, I don't think. But anyways, food for thought, and, if we could meet with Taylor's out there and figure out what we need, and then whether it's feasible, for this year or not.
I will give them a call.
Because that land has been resting now for a couple of years, so.
Yeah, and that particular field was brought up as part of the conversation, and they kind of asked the exact same question. Could
Yeah.
this go out there? And they said about a 40-foot wide swath is what they would need to get.
Is there any way we can figure out how many acres that is there, Dan, without,
I can do a measurement. I know we have it somewhere in the
5 maybe?
files. Yeah, I want to say it's like 5 to 10,
Yeah,
somewhere
okay,
in that
yeah.
ballpark.
okay.
You're going to measure it between now and the next meeting?
I can get a measurement, or I can find it through the files.
The computer thing kind of helps with that too.
Thank
so.
you.
And then and then one other thing I had, there's been some issue with parking at the airport. One in particular, I mean, it's kind of a courtesy thing, and I'm not sure if we have a policy or whatever, but, you know, he parks a car there for weeks at a time without being there, and I know folks with low-wing airplanes don't like it.
It's
And-
not tied up against his hangar. It's got
Right,
about
that's part
5
of it,
or
right,
6,
yeah.
8 feet there.
And if nothing else, they could park on one side or something, you know what I mean, and, you know, and get it close to the door. And so if you don't mind, if you guys say it's okay, I'll have a conversation with them and
Yeah.
just say, look, we're looking, because one of the rules is, as far as MinDOT is concerned, we're not allowed to block the taxiways, period. That's it. You know, unless there's some circumstance where, you know, like during the building phase or whatever. But we got to be darn careful with making sure those taxiways are open and in case somebody maybe isn't from the airport. And then I think the policy should be that, you know, if you're going to be gone, put your vehicle inside, you know, that's the whole idea if you're going to be on a cross-country trip.
Right.
Pull your airplane out, put your vehicle inside and get it off the taxiway. And so I will speak to the gentleman that were, and
Well, I think just eliminate long-term parking.
exactly, it doesn't, yeah, I mean, when you're there, it's a different story. You know, because if you had to, you could move, but yet, even when you're there, it's just a common courtesy to keep your stuff as far away as you possibly can. And so, but the long-term thing, I mean, there's a vehicle on each side, and it sits there for weeks at a time.
And unfortunately, it's at a hangar that's closest to the runway,
There-
almost closest to the runway.
Exactly, yeah.
So everybody has to get past it
So-
or around it on that taxiway.
I just wanted to bring that up so everybody knows about that, and it doesn't have to be something, we just something we just need to talk about.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's
Courtesy.
it's a courtesy thing, and by law, we have to keep those taxiways open unless there's a darn good reason to close it, you know?
Well, long-term parking, I mean, we got a parking lot down there.
Exactly, yep,
Yep.
public parking.
And the taxiway is what, 20 feet wide and,
Well, I think we have to have I don't remember exactly what it is, but, you know, you need a 50-foot.
I mean, the actual paved taxiways out there is 20 feet. Yeah, the average plane out there at the airport's probably a 30-foot at most. And someone like Jim Schultz's, which is
Yep.
a
20,
40-foot wingspan
Yeah,
probably, but.
you know, and we're at 36, a little over 36.
Yeah.
But most of the time, we can go over the top, but still, you still have to be really careful.
Right,
And-
right.
but
It
if
shouldn't have
somebody-
to
right, no,
do
no,
that.
no. So we'll have that conversation and try to get that worked out, so. And that's all I had this evening, guys, so.
Okay, that's it of the agenda items. Anyone on the commission have any other items to add to the agenda, Mr.?
I've got a couple of things. I don't know if they should be added to the agenda. I'm just telling you the research that I'm doing. Number one, I'm just asking airports who are building T-hangar projects about their financing and their numbers. That's all I'm doing, and I'm just collecting information. Some places it makes more sense than others, but I'm just collecting information. I'm also collecting information, I've got it from New Richmond and Amory so far, about courtesy car and why they have one and how much it costs and who owns it and what's their procedure and stuff like that. Again, I'm just collecting information. Parking at the airport, Sam already talked about. I was approached by an individual who wanted to rent a room at Forest Lake Airport for his aviation-related business. He wanted to rent the old Doherty house. And I told him, number one, it would cost you a fortune to heat it. Number two, and I think Tim mentioned this to me, it might have to meet code for us to be able to lease it out to anybody, no matter what the circumstances were. I don't know that for sure, but I know the building has asbestos in it, and I know it would cost a fortune, $5,500 to
It
heat
was a
that
really
thing.
expensive winter last time.
Yeah, so I just told him what that information, and it's out there. But there is demand, was what I'm trying to say.
Sure. But I think it's out of the question.
Yeah, I think it is too. There was some talk by some individuals at the airport about hosting a fly-in. I just told them I think it'd be great for the airport. The airport commission is not really sponsoring a fly-in as far as I know this year. You can't stop a person from putting out a notice and saying, show up to my hangar and fly in. So there was talk about doing that too. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything? Anyone from our audience? No?
You're it, Mark.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Passes. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen.